From the Detroit Free Press, I'm Brian Todd with today's voice briefing. It's Monday, September 30th, 2024.
For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Eric D. Lawrence. Stellantis is planning indefinite layoffs of union-represented workers and terminating supplemental employees as well. The automaker that owns the Jeep, Ram, Chrysler, Dodge, and Fiat brands isn't saying how many workers it plans to cut or even where, other than telling the Free Press that it will affect many of the company's U.S. manufacturing facilities. The company, which is already involved in a fight with the UAW over product commitments, cites market conditions and vehicle affordability as factors for the coming job cuts. Stellantis says it's continuing to, quote, take the necessary actions to improve operations across our facilities, end quote. One local union official, Eric Waters, who's vice president of Local 1700, representing workers at Sterling Heights Assembly Plant, also known as Sept, says the company's moves leave many unanswered questions. Quote, we're trying to understand their method of operation. We don't know the game plan, end quote, he tells the Free Press. Local 1700 says 177 supplemental workers are being cut and 14 full-time union workers will be laid off at Sept. Stellantis has been struggling with high inventory levels, sales declines in its key U.S. market, lower profitability, and a share price that's a little over half of what it was earlier this year. The UAW is threatening a potential national strike, and even Stellantis' U.S. dealers are calling out CEO Carlos Tavares for the direction of the company. Incidentally, the company has also launched a search for a successor to Tavares, but it indicates that it's not unusual to do so because his contract would expire in 2026, and the company notes that he could stay on longer.
I'm Dave Boucher with the Detroit Free Press. A Detroit judge temporarily removed from the bench after he detained a sleepy teen girl has returned to work after completing mandatory training. But it's not the same job for 36th District Court Judge Kenneth King. Instead of hearing the early stages of murder and domestic violence cases, Chief Judge William McConaughey said King is headed to traffic court. McConaughey said King will start his new docket on Monday, adding, quote, we appreciate his efforts in preparing for this role and wish him success as he transitions into this new responsibility. A lawyer representing King did not immediately respond to a text message seeking comment. Gary Felty, a lawyer representing the girl King had detained, declined to comment. Before his removal, King had one of the more high-profile criminal case schedules in Detroit. The traffic division handles far smaller cases. Common issues in this court include speeding, making an illegal turn, or driving without insurance. King successfully completed a course in a concept called conscious discipline, McConaughey said. This training was offered through an open-ended contract. McConaughey said there was every effort to keep costs down, but his office won't know the final cost until the trainer submits an invoice. Conscious discipline is a form of social-emotional learning instruction designed to help teachers, administrators, mental health professionals, and parents find the tools needed to regulate their own emotions while helping children or others under their charge thrive. In describing the training, McConaughey said it would focus on, quote, empathy and vulnerability in the legal practice and addressing bias and fostering equity, among other topics. King remained off the bench for about 6 weeks, during which he was paid to receive training. There's very little McConaughey or anyone else can do in terms of docking a judge's pay. As is the case when anyone in an elected position is accused of wrongdoing, punishment options and oversight powers are limited. McConaughey removed King from his scheduled docket after King had a teen girl detained, put in jail garb, and handcuffed for repeatedly falling asleep in his courtroom during a field trip. The teen, who has since filed a federal lawsuit against King, was held for roughly 2 hours in an isolated cell. Eventually, King brought her back to court, lambasting her before he asked her to plead with the court and her peers not to go to jail. King told the Free Press previously he didn't act inappropriately, and he was trying to impress upon the girl the seriousness of going to court. He has not provided additional comment since the lawsuit.
I'm Andrew Burkle with the Free Press Sports Tournament, and the Detroit Tigers are heading for an epic postseason matchup after finish off the regular season on Sunday. The Tigers were the story of the season in baseball this year, overcoming incredible odds to somehow make the playoffs with 2 games to spare. The Tigers, led by manager A.J. Hinch, partied like crazy on Friday after clinching their spot in the postseason. Hey, they were totally entitled to that. What the Tigers did in the second half of the season was truly remarkable. The Tigers finished the season with the same record as the Kansas City Royals after looking, let's say, a lot less focused on Saturday and Sunday, dropping both games to the historically bad Chicago White Sox. With the losses, the Tigers fell to the 6th seed in the American League playoffs, and now will play the Houston Astros in a 3-game wild card series in Texas. The storylines here are analysts. First of all, there's a guy you might have heard of named Justin Verlander, who still pitches for the Astros, the same team the Tigers traded him to once upon a time. Verlander hasn't been in the best form, but he's still Justin Verlander. The stories write themselves. Then there's the man the Tigers call their fearless leader, A.J. Hinch. Hinch helped lead Justin Verlander to his first World Series title in 2017, but was eventually fired because of an elaborate sign-stealing scheme that Hinch has said he didn't do enough to stop, but didn't help design. Hinch was fired by the Astros and suspended for a full season before the Tigers decided to scoop him up in 2021. It was a rocky road for Hinch's first 3 years in Detroit, but now Hinch has returned the Tigers to glory just in time for a matchup with the Houston Astros in the postseason. MLB announced late Sunday that the Tigers will have the first game of the day in all three potential matchups on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, with the first pitch scheduled for 2:32 p.m. on ABC. It's been a wild ride to get to this point, but if you ask the Tigers, the journey is just beginning.
Find more from the Detroit Free Press on freep.com. That's FREEP.com. Thanks for listening, and you'll hear more from us tomorrow.